Hey folks, this is Jason Lewis, the producer of the From the Shadows podcast. I just want to remind you about our website, fromtheshadowspodcast.com. We have a Facebook page. We would appreciate it if you like and follow. Also, join our discussion group on Facebook called After the Shadows. We have a Twitter feed. Please follow us on Twitter. It can be found with @podcast_from. Follow us on Instagram at From the Shadows Podcast. We have a YouTube channel. Go to the search bar at YouTube and put From the Shadows Podcast, and please subscribe to that channel. We are also on the Odyssey Radio Network, and we can be found there at odyssey1.com. We're still on the traditional podcatchers that everybody loves to listen to us on. We get a lot of feedback, so please rate the podcast and communicate with whether you're on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or Google Podcasts. We're there, and we appreciate it when you leave comments for us. We also have a Patreon page. It can be found at www.patreon.com/From the Shadows. You can receive books, stickers, coffee mugs, and special content just for our Patreon subscribers. Check it out for yourself and see what packages that we have to offer. Well, that's all I have for you right now, folks, and thanks for being a part of the From the Shadows podcast family. So with that being said, let's get this episode started.
Okay, so Howler, we had our big Bratwurst Festival here in Bucyrus, Ohio this weekend. Okay.
Right.
Supposedly we were
world famous.
World famous. We were one of the Bratwurst Bratwurst capital. At one time there was four.
Why there? Because you got a lot of Polish people or German people or
a lot of German people, and at one time when I was a kid, there was like 5 Bratwurst makers, and there's some good stuff. Like I vividly remember, going through the middle of through Bucyrus, because Bucyrus is a halfway point from Columbus going to Lake Erie. And on Friday nights, a lot of people are heading up to the lake. And I remember back in the 70s and maybe early 80s, I think it was Bob's Bratwurst. I can't remember the guy's last name, but he had a little restaurant there. But he had the cart on the side of the street, smoke just, he's cooking bratwurst and people are pulling over, getting sandwiches on the way to the lake. I mean, it's kind of a cool memory to have, that small town America sometimes has. But so we have this big Bratwurst festival, and it's it's big. It's, our town's like 12,000 people, and there'd be like 100,000 people pile into town over 3 days. I used to be the entertainment guy, do the entertainment. I did that for 4 or 5 years anyway. But the big thing at the Bratwurst festival is now I don't drink. I never had a drop to drink in my life, but we go up and you hang out at the beer garden for the Elks or whatever, and
right,
because that's their big money maker. And but out on the east end of town, like where Christy and I would have to come home, it's an old Kmart parking lot, and it's family farm or something. But there's like 15. It's a drunk checkpoint, okay?
Oh,
drunk checkpoint. So they're always pulling. And normally I don't have any problems, but our loyal listeners remember a couple episodes ago, I only got one headlight. So I long story short, I had to go like the long way home because I didn't want to go back.
Why didn't you just drive through it? And they just walk up to the window and ask you for this is the way we used to do it. Now, I haven't done one in well over 20 years. They just say, can I see your driver's license, proof of insurance? That's what they do in Missouri. And then, generally speaking, in that interaction, when you're able to get your driver's license, proof of insurance, they determine if they think you've been drinking or not. And if you haven't, they just say, okay, get your headlight fixed. And because, they got another guy behind you. So,
well, but I didn't want to take the chance. I mean, that'd be Like maybe what if
Chance of
it's
what?
what if it's a slow night? There's no drunks, and they're like,
And
well, we
what
got to write it.
they're gonna falsely accuse you of being drunk? No, this is
No,
the
I'm thinking I'm going to
state
get a
police,
no.
not the FBI. They're not gonna frame you.
I think I'm going to get a no headlight ticket. That's what I think. I don't want
So
to.
it's not a moving violation. Have you knew anybody that got a ticket for no headlight? Ever?
I don't know. Maybe nobody's dumb enough to have their headlight out as long as I have so far. So I don't know.
I mean,
I
that
don't know.
would be.
I'm
I
gonna
mean,
start at. I
if
guess
you
I
know
gotta
what
start
I'm telling
asking.
you what now, if I don't even know. I'm speechless at the thought of a police officer writing a ticket for no headlight. Now, I've certainly stopped enough people for no headlights, but I always let them go if they're not, you know.
Doing anything wrong?
Yeah, that's just a probable cause to get in there and see what's going on, and and then you let them go, right? But I wasn't
Well,
a very good cop. I mean, I've told you the story. I wasn't a very good. I didn't write very many tickets. I didn't arrest a whole lot of people. I just drove around and waited for them to call me for something.
well, well. But what I can't figure out is though, as I'm smart enough to drive around, at least I thought I was until I told you this, that I know I don't have a headlight out, so I'm going to avoid that. Well, how many people? I mean, this has been going on for 10 years. They got this checkpoint out there. How many people do you think actually have been drinking and go through that? Are
Dozens.
people? Are you?
Now they don't get the locals because you guys all know it. But I mean, think about 100,000 strangers coming through there eating bratwurst.
Man, oh man. All right. I
Right? I
guess.
mean, it'd have to be. I'm trying to think. Now I didn't work a lot of checkpoints. I've been on a bunch of wolf packs, but I only worked one or two checkpoints. And I worked the last checkpoint I worked with. I was about to say this guy's name, and I won't because he's a captain now. But at that time, he might have been a corporal, but he was certainly a trooper with me. Guy I grew up with, pillar of the community. Um, and it was about over. And totality, I think there was 20 some of us down there. And when you run a DWI checkpoint like the Ozarks in the summertime, it can get pretty busy, right? We
Oh
arrested
yeah.
18 or 19 drunks by midnight.
Oh my.
Yes, so he walked up to this F-150. I vividly remember it was a it was a regular cab. It wasn't really a regular cab. You know how some of them Fords have a real short window. It was
Yeah,
like an
yeah.
extended cab, two-wheel drive Ford F-150 that had one of those flat fiberglass bed covers on the side, on the back of it. You with me?
Yep, I'm with you.
We're at a T intersection, and they have a giant like Winnebago command center at the bottom of the T, and me and him are on the top of the T. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But what happens is, big lighted intersection. What happens is when people get there, they get a little freaked out because they don't know if it's a wreck. They don't, you know what I mean? They get a little freaked out as they're coming to a stop.
See all the
So
lights and everything, and
yes,
they just
yes. Now my buddy is in on the striped line of a state highway. Now I am in the ditch. I think I'd been over in the bushes peeing or something, but I couldn't figure out why I was coming out of the ditch. So when he gets this truck stopped, okay, they're
Yeah.
jacking around in the console, and he starts yelling at him to show me your hands kind of deal. And this is 25 years ago before everybody shot everybody, right?
Yeah.
So both passengers, the driver and the passenger, are jacking around the console of his pickup. I'm at the passenger side window. My buddy's at the driver's side window. And after about the third time that he said, "Let me see your hands," the guy didn't comply. In those days, it was hands on. Nowadays they shoot you, tase you, do kind of crazy stuff. But in them days, he reached in there and grabbed the guy. And what the guy had was um, a bag of weed, some weed, and this is back when they cared about weed. And he had, I think, $13,000 or $14,000, and they were just trying to stash all their stuff in the console of this F-150, right?
Holy smoke! $13,000 or $14,000.
Well, it ended up being by the time, if I remember correctly, we ended up. So I don't know if he thought he was going to drive away, which is another thing back in the day. if you were at the window and they were going to drive away with you, you know how nowadays people, they pull out their gun and shoot the police. In my day, you just reached in the window and shut the ignition off. Even though the car's in drive, you can't pull the key out, but you can just shut the car off. So the first thing you do is reach in and shut the car off. So my buddy reaches in, shuts his car off, and then on the way, so you reach in, reach over, you shut the car off, and on your way pulling your hand back out, you grab the selector and yank it up into park on them. And now sometimes if they're moving or roll a little bit, it breaks the parking ears. It goes click. Brrr. I mean, your mechanics know what I'm talking about. And then you reach in, open the car door, and you introduce yourself to them. You know what I'm saying? So my buddy
Good evening,
huh?
sir. Good evening, sir.
Yeah. So my buddy is reaching in, shutting the car off, pulling the truck off, pulling it in park, opening the car door, and pulling him out at the same time. And his the kid on the passenger side, they were college age kids, 23, 24, 22, 20, I don't remember. I just remember they were both enrolled in college. The kid on the passenger side, I don't remember. For some reason, I thought he was going to try to climb over and take the truck or something. So I pulled the driver's side or the passenger side door out, and I, pulled him out. And by this time, there's all these troopers around like pigeons at a potato chip or something, because they're all standing around his command post, right? And they're empty out, and they all come over there, and so he ended up having 35 pounds of marijuana. I don't remember how much crack cocaine, which back in those days, crack was a big thing. But interesting enough, so we ended up charging them federally in the district of southern Missouri, southwest Missouri, actually, because they had enough to get federal. So we ended up getting $30-some thousand in cash, 6 or 7 pounds, or 30-some pounds of weed, and I don't remember how many ounces of cocaine and crack cocaine. But the most interesting thing I found, so we opened this, we're going to tow his stuff. We opened his truck bed cap, and it was full. I mean, it looked like you dumped eBay out in it. Okay. So I started going through all these receipts, right? Because that was a big thing that they had. I mean, they had like 30-some thousand bucks in the truck, and that's about what I was making a year, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they're college kids.
Yeah, and they're college kids. And I went through all these receipts, and they had spent $18,000 since Friday night. This was Saturday night, Sunday morning, 1 o'clock, and they had spent $18,000. They'd bought a jet ski, they'd bought new life jackets, they'd bought fishing rods, they'd bought tackle boxes, they'd bought coolers, they'd bought beer, they had spent $18,000 clothes. I mean, they had, because there's a big outlet mall down here at the lake. They had, they spent $900 at the Polo store and $900 at the Nike store, and you just can't even imagine. And they had put it all in the bed of this F-150 and just closed the lid. They're just down there having a good time, and we screwed it up for them.
So if was he drunk?
No.
So if he hadn't been messing around with the dashboard,
if he would have just kept his hands on the wheel and produced his driver's license, proof of insurance, we probably never would have. Now, my partner was kind of aggressive. He searched cars. I wasn't a car searcher, because they have, especially dopers cars, they got needles and, tetanus rust and just all this, chicken bones. You can't even imagine all the crap you find in the back of a car. You know what I mean? I was on a stop, huh? Yes, so I didn't stop. I didn't search trash. I didn't, I was trying to be a clean guy. Hey, I was on a traffic stop, not to switch gears here. I was a brand new trooper, and a dude that worked in the adjoining zone. I was driving down the highway, and an older trooper on this U.S. highway, U.S. 54, he had stopped. It was a pretty new. I think it was a Buick. I don't think it was a Cadillac, but it was like a Buick or an Oldsmobile, like a year or two old car. And he had this clean freak, this immaculately dressed like salesman guy, right?
Yeah.
And his car was completely clean. And I remember this trooper saying, "You ain't got nothing in the car. You ain't got nothing in the car." You ain't supposed to say, "No, sir. You ain't got nothing to hide." Blah blah blah. So, you don't mind if we look? He goes, "You can look. I ain't got nothing." And this guy looked over the trunk lid to me, and he doesn't hardly know me at all, right? I mean, we've seen each other, but I'm a rookie. He's been around. We're wearing the same uniform. He goes, "Hey, get them Hardee's bags out of the floorboard and check them." And right in the back seat in the floorboard on the passenger side back seat, there was two. You know how, like, if you go to Hardee's and you eat your food or whatever, and you stuff all your wrappings in your cup, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. It becomes the trash bag.
Yeah, and this dude had almost $50,000 in two Hardee's bags stuffed in there, thrown in the floorboard. And a little later, and I said, "What was that about?" And he goes, "Do you see how clean that guy was and his car was? He wasn't going to throw trash in it like that. He would threw it out the rest area, or guy that clean ain't going to drive around with trash in the floorboard."
So, well, first of all, that's pretty good policing. Second of all, what was he doing with 50 grand? What
I don't remember. He was a doper. I don't remember. Who knows? He could have been a legitimate businessman. I don't remember, but. So back in some places, and I wasn't a big money seizer, because some of these people are big into, and it's kind of gotten on a hot seat where they seize money. There was in the news down here where if you're breaking the law, especially if you're in possession of controlled substance like marijuana or cocaine or whatever, and if you got very much money, they seize the money and make you prove where you got it. Does that make sense? So
yeah.
If you got $50,000 for 35, most of them is just trash. $2,500, $3,500. These cops spend a lot of time seizing this money because they're just messing around with mopes or whatever, and they, my numbers are a little different than the average street cop. You know what I'm saying? So I've been with cops that wanted to seize $2,500 from some alleged doper, and you're going, dude, it's just $2,500. It ain't like he's got. Is that really any money? I mean, I knew all kinds of old farmers would reach in their bibs and pull out $5,000-$6,000 if they're going to a sale, not thinking nothing about it.
No kidding.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Hey, look, I've heard of farmers going into buying a tractor or a truck and pulling out 30,000-40,000 in cash.
Yeah.
And plopping it down.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, hey, pull somebody over in Amish country. They're liable to have a lot more than that. More than that in cash.
Exactly.
Going to the bank.
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, but in theory, they wouldn't be breaking the law. See, so there's usually like in state of Missouri, there's got to be a felonious component with just taking somebody's money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not like they could just take anybody's money. But I seen it, not to go off even on a third tangent, but I was on a deal on a and I'm trying to pick my words here because I was in a counterterrorism role at that time. But there was a dude that they thought was sneaking something through the checkpoint, and they thought it was I don't know what they thought it was, but he was a Chinese national, and he had $60,000+ basically duct taped around him.
Oh my.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And
well, if you're duct taping it, you're probably trying to hide it, right?
He was trying to hide it, and I was part of the crew that went over there to say, hey, well, me and one old FBI agent were the crew that pulled him out and said, what's going on? And it's funny, he got me and the guy he got was on the FCI. FCI stands for Foreign Counterintelligence. Foreign Counterintelligence guy with us, and I just remember this old dude saying, "Hey man, just tell us what's up, and maybe we'll cut you loose or something like that." And he said he had opened he owned a Chinese restaurant, right?
Okay.
And I mean, his first statement, he didn't come up with big stories. He didn't try to, you know what I'm saying? He said, I moved to Omaha to open a Chinese restaurant. I borrowed the money from somebody, and I'm wanting to say New York because I think he was flying to New York. And he said, I borrowed the money 2 years ago or whatever to open my restaurant. They loaned me the money in cash, and I have to pay them back in cash. So I've taken a few hundred every week out of the register for 2 years or whatever, and I'm going back to pay my debt. And I didn't want to drive. So I thought I could sneak through. And I said, well, after 9/11, you really can't sneak through. They get inked up. So we actually took his money along with that statement, and it wasn't a few weeks later, U.S. Attorney's Office, they give it all back to him because he had a tax ID number, he had a legitimate business, it was legitimate proceeds. He just and had. You know what's funny is if he would have put it in a bag and declared it. Now theoretically, you only have to declare more than $10,000 when you're flying international. You don't have to declare it domestically. But had he went over to it in a bag and checked it, not really checked it, but declared it right,
Yeah.
declared it with that story, they probably wouldn't have took it in the first place.
Jeez. Oh man, he had to be sweating for 2 weeks, man.
He had to be sweating.
Yeah, like
Hey, he's and I don't want to get too ethnic here, but these Chinese dudes, yeah, they sweat because they're used to disappearing. I did a, and this is going back probably almost 30 years ago now. This narcotics unit was doing a buy bust, where they do a hand-to-hand buy, and when the car pulls out, we're going to take them down. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And we know the parking lot. I'm in a marked car if they go north. There's another dude hiding in a marked car if they go south. This undercover dude rolls up. His car's got audio and video, and then there's some undercover dudes around or whatever. And 3 18, 19-year-old kids, basically high schoolers, a little out of high school, buy 2 or 3. It was a little big. I mean, it was 2 or 3 pounds of weed, but at that time was a big, 2 or 3 pounds of marijuana was a lot,
Oh yeah.
And but now it's just personal use with these potheads. But back in those days, it was something. And what? And when they went to what?
It's true.
It's
but
true.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, they went to pull out, and I remember I had a Chevy Caprice, and I remember rolling on in there with all my red lights on. This other dude rolling red lights on, and I don't remember if I had my shotgun. I was real bad about pulling my shotgun out back in the old days because it looked cool. You know what I mean? That was a cool thing to do in those days, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays they roll around with AR-15s, but in those days. So anyway, I remember racking a shotgun. We had these kids out, told them to get on the ground, and they were 100% compliant. 100% compliant. The driver kind of talked back a little bit, but I racked a shotgun. We had him face down, and the kid from the back seat was bawling and pissed his pants.
Okay.
And the driver was talking. The driver was talking. I'm sorry, the front seat passenger. The doper was the driver. Front seat passenger was buddies with the driver. That was his cousin. Him and his cousin were speaking in Chinese. We separated him down in jail, and I mean, this kid, the Chinese kid from the back seat, was flipped out. And the cousin said, he just got here a month ago or 6 weeks ago, and he goes, in China, they'd killed him. They would have shot us in the parking lot. If they caught us with this much marijuana in China, they would have killed us in the parking lot. That's what's going on with him. And he said he's not for sure. His parents and his family had to work so hard to get him here. They might kill him for disrespecting the family.
Oh, geez.
And we're like, is this for real? And because it's like that's 100%, man. He said every time he hears that somebody, because we had an old jail at that time. Every time he hears one of them keys go in that slot, he thinks, you guys are going to put him against the wall.
Oh my God.
Yeah, of course the prosecutor knew all this was going on, and we, the prosecutor was watching that interview this dude on the, he listened to these stories, because what happens is, especially on, sometimes out of boredom, sometimes we can ask the judge how it works. Sometimes anyway, within an hour, the prosecutor said, "Hey, let that guy go. We know who he is. Just let him go."
Go let him change.
We never heard, he went on anybody's radar or whatever. But I mean, so some place in the world they haul you out and kill you. So I don't know what got me on that subject, but I've seen, he's probably the freak outest person, because most of you go arrest some 19-year-old punk who's been selling weed his whole life. He badmouths you. But you arrest a Chinese national and they about crap their pants. I was telling you about the guy at the checkpoint. So yeah, the Chinese are on a whole different guilt scale than the Americans.
Well, So circling all the way back around, imagine if I would have been rolling through a Chinese checkpoint with my headlight out.
You probably wouldn't have had a car.
I'd probably just taken my car.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have had a car if you were there. Hey, I got a Chinese story too. I don't even know if I should tell this one, but I'm going to, because that's what happened. Me and some of my counterparts worked in a like I said, counterterrorism role in support of different national security events. One of those events was the Beijing Olympics. Okay. And we had all these case briefings on if you were going to, because some people actually went to China, and I didn't go to China. I stayed here, but some of my coworkers went to China and did that side of it. Okay.
Yep.
And we had all these briefings, so everybody had a briefing that might go. Does that make sense? So the people that were going had to go, and then the backup people had to go to these briefings. So one of the briefings was you could be under surveillance. Out of every 4 guys, only one of them took their phone. I don't think we had iPhones at the time. I think we had Blackberries, but whichever it was, right? So everybody. So if it was like me, you, Jason, and a judge going, one of us would bring our phone, but the other 3 people had to leave our phone back in America, right?
Yep.
So if any of us used, you know what I mean? So that way it was compartmentalized or whatever. So my buddy went through this great length to pack his bag exactly right, because when he checked in his hotel room, he's going to go down in the hotel restaurant and get a bite to eat or drink or whatever he's going to do. And he had a couple little pieces of Scotch tape at different places on different pairs of pants, and the way he stacked his bag, that way he could tell. He'd been watching too many James Bond movies. That way he could tell if somebody
rifled through his stuff.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Did he put the the hair on the door?
Yeah, those guys come back from the restaurant bar or whatever they're doing, and their bags were unpacked and all their clothes were laid out on the bed. The Chinese didn't give a shit if you knew that they went through it or not. They just unpacked it.
And that wasn't part of room service? That was
I don't know. What do you think of that?
They just unpacked.
Yeah, they don't care.
Like, what are you going to do? Like,
yeah, what are you going to do? Call somebody on your one phone?
Oh.
Anyway, yeah. That's the world, man. It's you're not in, what they say, you're not in Kansas anymore. Know what she says?
You're not in Kansas.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out. Ha 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 ha.